Welcome. Thank you for joining us for Webinar 5 in a series of 6 webinars designed to support participants in Samsung's Solve for Tomorrow competition. My name is Julie Baker. I'm Head of Education at Auckland's MOTAT and one of the judges for the Solve for Tomorrow competition. With me today is Sarah Washbrooke from TENZ, who is also a competition judge. We'll start with the karakia.
Maori ora ki a mātou, arahina mātou I a mātou mahi, ki mihia he huarahi mō te kaupapa o te mātauranga o Hangarau, a whina atu, a whina mai, te pau e here nei I a mātou, hui e, tae ki e. Our whakatauki for this session today, he manako te kura I kore ai. Crayfish are scarce when they are expected, or don't count your chickens before they hatch.
So we're going to start talking about the junior category, years 7 to 10 first. You'll be aware that we have been working through a design thinking process, and this is the design thinking process that your students will be working through. And the focus of today's webinar is going to be on the testing and implementing stage. In a previous webinar, we were talking about the development of the idea, and we spoke about the difference between modelling and prototyping. So a model, just to reiterate, is a non-working representation used to explain the product, whereas a prototype is a working representation, and it's used to detect flaws or problems before you might move into production. So these two steps precede what you do when you get to your final outcome, which is the topic for today's webinar. So the final outcome is a fully realised product, and it's made using appropriate materials and appropriate techniques. And you'll see here we've got an example from Mount Richmond Special School Kitchen Tools Reimagined project. And this is their final outcome. It is a full-scale model, it is completely functional, and it is used by stakeholders to actually test and evaluate that it is fit for its original purpose. So you can see that they have listed the features of their solution, but they've also looked at what modifications might need to be made based on the feedback from the users. So they decided their knife blade needed to be longer, that the board needs sticky feet to stop it from sliding around, that the heel of the knife needs protective cushioning, etc., etc. So they've started to identify some of the things that they might do before they actually went into production of the actual final outcome. All along the way, it's really important that you record the stages of your process. As a judge, it's really frustrating if you have a project presented to you that looks really, really great, but there are missing parts of the process, and you have to make assumptions about the sort of thing that might have gone on in the background that actually you haven't provided any evidence for us to be able to give you marks for that. So really important that you just keep making sure that you are recording your process and dropping it into your presentation so that we are able to then get a really fully fleshed idea of the process that you have worked through. What are the judges looking for in this part of the process? So the final outcome comes into the process and the feasibility and evaluation criteria. So we look for documented evidence of the outcome and the evidence that the feasibility was considered during your development. As you're aware already, there are a lot of resources available for you on the Samsung Solve for Tomorrow website. The webinar which is particularly appropriate for this particular topic is producing and trialling a prototype.
So let's explore the senior category for our years 11 to 13. In the technology curriculum, we have different aspects to consider when we're looking at manufacturing a final outcome. Obviously, this is if you are creating a physical outcome. Sometimes you may be doing something that's digital, or you may be doing a system approach instead. But if you're looking at a physical outcome that you are creating, then it is good to understand the different ways of actually creating an outcome. Materials can be formed, manipulated, transformed, and usually, in many cases, combined. Can it be implemented with current technology and resources? So we are looking at how you are effectively using the materials and resources and components and putting them together to complete your final outcome. It is really important that you provide evidence of the following. So how the product has been made, what is the process you have gone through? Using photographs and video is a great way of identifying what you have done, if you've come across any problems, and if you've had to modify the idea through the manufacturing process. Obviously, evidence of the final outcome is going to be very important too. At this level, it will be useful to showcase which advanced processes you are going into. So instead of just cutting materials, for example, in plastics and wood, you may be going into more manipulation materials and processes themselves. So you may be combining materials to make a new material, for example. It is very, very important to justify why you have chosen the materials and processes that you have done for your actual final outcome. And it's also worthwhile to consider other aspects too, like, is the product sustainable? Link it to the wider society points of view, and does it connect to us as New Zealanders? Let's have a look at some examples of final outcomes in some of the projects. Here are 3 different examples of evidence of students' work through the design process when they're developing an idea and creating a final outcome. Howick College shows you how they actually came up with their idea and identified the different components that they would need, just explaining what they are and why they are important. Cameron Moore, as you can see at the bottom, this is a photograph of his actual final outcome, and he also provided a video to the judges so we could see it in action working, so we could understand the actual outcome and how it suits his need and his problem that he came up with. Brooklyn Johns, as you can see here, not only has created his final outcome, but he's also gone back to the original brief and attributes and analysed his final outcome against those attributes, making sure that the product is fit for purpose and does what it needs to do. So when we look at the score sheet for the senior category, you'll notice that the final prototype or final outcome actually has a section for itself totally. It is actually worth 20% of the mark, so it's worth more than the other categories on the score sheet itself. And we are looking for evidence that you have created, manufactured, made the final outcome using different types of materials, processes and approaches. If you want a copy of this slideshow, then you can use the QR code to scan and it will take you to an exact copy of the slides, or you can click on the bit.ly link at the top. This webinar is also available to you at any time on the Samsung Solve for Tomorrow website and the TENZ YouTube channel. We'll finish with our karakia. Kia mātou katoa, kua motu mātou ia mātou mahi, ia mātou kaupapa hoki. Arahina mātou, ki kaue mātou ia mātou haipapa. Kia whakatapua mātou ki ngā kaupapa me ngā mea e whakapono. Manakitia mai mātou. Kia ora.